Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Mishti and I love all things bookish to the point that I decided I'm going to do my degree in English literature, and I am in my last semester at college, which basically means it has been 2 to 3 years of just listening. Oh, what are you going to do with an English literature degree? So basically you just read books and then you give your exams on books, which is, well, I can't beat the unemployment allegations yet because I am in college and who knows what's in store for me. But anyway, so that degree meant that I spent the last 2 to 3 years just like drowning in books and overanalyzing every single piece of text and deciding which books are actually worth your time, which classic books are worth your time, and which aren't. And that also means that I have spent the last 2 to 3 years like drowning in books and forming really strong opinions on which classic books are actually worth your time and which can maybe be a skip or maybe aren't as beginner friendly and might seem more daunting. Insert Chaucer, because that guy just like, I don't know what's up with him. Like, maybe if I discovered his work like outside of like college and like writing an essay on it, I think I might have liked it, although I'm not too sure what, because it's written in like old English and it's just like so mind numbingly difficult to understand. But anyways, so because I totally completely understand the feeling that classics can feel so intimidating and so dense, because let's be honest, this length is so not easy, and the sentence structure, the dense words, it is pretty difficult. But I feel like there are some which are a little bit more accessible in terms of just like their plot points, just like how they're written. And while I love Pride and Prejudice and Jane Eyre, I feel like those are just too hefty, and those might not be the ones where you want to start with when you're just like trying to dip your toes into classic literature. And I feel like I'm gonna have a cold. I'm gonna catch a cold soon. So, anyways, yeah, I was saying, yeah. So also, I have a really cool copy of Jane Eyre. I want to show you guys. And without further ado, let me just get straight into the recommendations bit of this video, and just like give these books a chance. And I'm sure like you'll find something that might just end up on your like all-time favorites list, because some of them are just so fun and like witty and smart books, which but like just so interesting. And yeah, so I'll just like show you the recommendations because I'm like just like blabbering at this point. So in this video I'm gonna tell you about 15 beginner friendly classics that are short, accessible, and just like a really good entry point into the genre. So let's go. Okay, so right off the bat, the first book I want to recommend is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And just like starting so strong with Gatsby, because this is a novel about love, wealth, illusion, and like basically what it means to live the American dream. And Gatsby, he builds his whole empire on illusion and glitter and all of that for just like for a love that barely exists. And it's about the American dream, but let's be honest, the dream is just like Gatsby pining over Daisy and he throws her lavish parties, and it's just like so short and beautifully written. So I think that would be a really fun book to like explore the genre. The next book I want to talk about is Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. And this play has been famously described by an Irish critic, Vivian Mercier, as a play where nothing happens twice, which is actually so true, because that's precisely what happens. Nothing happens. That's the whole point of that play. And this is as weird as it gets, because it's just like so absurd, which is definitely the whole point. But the two main characters, Didi and Gogo, they just like wait around waiting for this person named Godot, as the name suggests. And as the name suggests, waiting just like plays such a huge part in this play, and they just like pass their time with pointless conversations, absurd humor, like pondering over life, contemplating suicide. And if you've like just like wanted a play where like nothing happens, this is it, because that's the whole point. And the entire genius of like Samuel Beckett just lies in how profound this is, because you end up waiting and you have that hope, you don't succumb to nihilism that, oh, like nothing is gonna happen for me and like I might as well die. So this is so hilarious, so frustrating, and like really really profound. And yeah, if you like just like ever had a really pointless conversation in your life that just like leads to nowhere, that's precisely like how Didi and Gogo feel, because that's their lives, that's literally their whole lives on repeat. So the next up on my list is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I am a Wuthering Heights stan, because Wuthering Heights isn't like just like a gothic romance, it's a full blown emotional hurricane. And this is Emily Bronte's only novel. It's packed with like obsession, revenge, and like almost enough toxicity to make like contemporary dark romance like feel tame. And so the characters Heathcliff and Catherine, their love like it's not like a normal contemporary romance book you'll see. It's not like sweet, it's not gentle, but it's just like so wild, destructive, and like completely unhinged. And I saw this one post, I don't know, on Pinterest or Tumblr somewhere, that is basically just a group of awful people, and who have made a pact that they want to ruin as many lives as possible, and just like Heathcliff wins, which is honestly not very far off, because that's precisely what happens. And Heathcliff is often like labeled as a gothic villain, but he fits the bill of a Byronic hero more, because okay, so if you don't know what a Byronic hero is, a Byronic hero is like a deeply flawed, rebellious character, but also somebody who's capable of love and showing like affection. It's named after the famous romantic poet Lord Byron. And yeah, so Heathcliff is just like the Byronic hero, like epitomized. And yeah, he like embodies it so perfectly. His love for Catherine is so intense, it's so destructive, but like it just like turns him into a force of destruction. And if you just like love dramatic stories with like eerie atmospheres and characters who make the worst possible decisions ever, and if you want to feel good about your own bad decisions, you should read Wuthering Heights, because no matter how bad your decisions are, I'm sure Heathcliff's decisions are worse. The book I want to talk about is a short story by Edgar Allan Poe. It's called The Telltale Heart, and this short story is proof that like Edgar Allan Poe can make every single thing so terrifying, and especially a single heartbeat. So this is a short story, so you can't give me any excuses that, oh, like I don't want to read it, it's so long. No, 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 no. Nope, no excuses. You can, it's just like really accessible and it's fun, it's like very nice. So this is a very quick but like very unforgettable book about a person's descent into madness and paranoia. And the narrator basically gaslights like himself into believing that, oh, I'm actually not insane, I'm pretty insane, just like you know how our best friends think, oh, I'm actually not gonna text that guy back, I'm totally over him. So they just like gaslight themselves. That's what our narrator does. He gaslights himself into believing I'm actually a pretty sane person and I cannot actually do anything wrong. So what actually starts off as a calculated crime, it like just like turns into spiral, it turns and spirals into like a psychological horror. And yeah, so the narrator, he just becomes haunted by the one thing that he wanted to silence of another person, which is that single heartbeat. But we actually don't we get to explore how that single heartbeat, is it his own guilty conscience, or is it actually the other person who he wanted to silence. And like Edgar Allan Poe just like masterfully blurs the line between like reality and delusion, and he might just like make you worried about your own heartbeat, and you might be a little scared. So pick your poison, actually. Okay, so the next book I want to talk about is a really, really interesting one, because I read this in my first semester and I really, really enjoyed it so much. So, also, fun fact, this is like a text where I wrote my essay on, and I got the highest marks in like my class in my department for that particular essay. And the professor just like acknowledged that, and he was like, I did give like two other people the same amount of marks, but yours was the best. So anyways, enough bragging about my academic validation. Anyways, so yeah, so the book I want to talk about is Antigone. And Antigone is a Greek tragedy, and I know when you think Greek tragedy, it must be like really like intimidating to get started with, but I feel like Antigone is like a really good like just like starting point into the Greek tragedy genre. And this is a story about defiance, duty, and what happens when there's a clash between the divine law and the natural law. So the divine law is imposed by the gods, and the natural law is imposed by the king or whatever the ruler is at that particular point of time. So the king in the story is called King Creon, and he forbids the burial of Antigone's brother, and Antigone refuses to accept that, and she's like, I actually will bury my brother, I just don't give a fuck about you. So yeah, so she actively defies him. And why does she defy him? It's because in ancient Greece it is like unacceptable to like not give somebody a proper burial, because it's a crime against the gods. So Antigone of course does not want to commit a crime against gods, and she's driven by moral conviction, while Creon, he's just obsessed with control and power. So if you just like love stories about like rebellion and fate and philosophical debates that almost like never get old, I feel like Antigone is like a really, really must read for you. Next book I want to talk about is also a short story, which is The Meek One by Dostoevsky. And this is so short, but don't let that fool you, because it does pack a punch. And it's gonna mess with your head, like for sure. And this is basically a one-man show about a guy spiraling about after his wife's death, and he basically tries and fails to justify everything that happened like throughout, like that led to the demise of his wife. And just like he's just like trying to defend himself and saying, oh, I actually like did love my wife. But when you see how he treated her, and just like how he behaved, like you are left like wondering, like does this person actually know what like love means? And yeah, this is like such a good like entryway into Dostoevsky's work, because let's be honest, Crime and Punishment is daunting, and I read this for one of my coursework, and I just like really, really enjoyed this book. I got my Penguin Black Classic. I love the Penguin Black Classics. And the point is, it because okay, so this is written in the 19th century realism time period, and one of the key characteristics of this time period was everything is just like so descriptive and vast, like people will not leave any single detail out, so it is pretty daunting. So my point was, if you want to explore Dostoevsky work, I feel like you can try out The Meek One, or like White Knights is of course there. And yeah, those two can be pretty good entry points into Dostoevsky work. Like he at one point he's like admiring and worshipping his wife, and the next time he's actually enjoying her misery. And all of this, he just like knows something terrible is gonna happen. And if you've never read like Dostoevsky, and Crime and Punishment just like feels too big of a commitment, and you like maybe don't want to just like start with such a hefty book, so this is a pretty good one, so you should check that out. So the next book on my list is Dracula by Bram Stoker. And okay, so this is also a really, really interesting book, and I feel like everybody should read this, because like take the Vampire Diaries and Twilight for example. Before vampires were brooding heartthrobs, they were like just like downright terrifying, and you actually would not fall in love with one. And Dracula is like a gothic horror at its finest, because there are like dark castles, eerie landscapes, and this is written in a series of diary entries and letters, where the novel just basically unravels as Dracula moves to the heart of England, and he leaves behind a trail of blood and terror. Like think after like Klaus takes Stefan to the like the hunting spree after, you get what I mean. Unlike like contemporary portrayal of vampires who struggle with their humanity, Dracula is not that. He will definitely not drink animal blood to keep his conscience alive, and he is like pure evil and unapologetic about his like evilness. He doesn't sparkle, he doesn't fall in love, because why would he? And if you're thinking Twilight from Edward Cullen and Stephen Salvatore from Vampire Diaries, you're thinking wrong, because those people might be the heroes, but Dracula is definitely not. And he just like fully embraces his darkness, and he's like hunger, control, and seduction just like wrapped into one little package. And he's not the kind of vampire that's gonna make you swoon, but he's just gonna make you like, it's just gonna make your heart feel like scared, and it's gonna make your skin get goosebumps. And Yeah, so if you like me love vampires and vampires have a soft spot in your heart just like vampire stories, you should read Dracula. The next book I want to talk about is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, and this is just like one of the stories you have to read once in your life, and it is such a beautiful exploration of human rights, and it's just gonna stay with you for a really really long time. And this is told through the perspective of a child narrator, and at at its surface it feels like a buildings roman, and but beneath that it's like so powerful because it explores race, identity, and what it means to have or not have human rights, and what it means when they are curtailed by systemic flaws. So father of the child narrator is Atticus Finch, and he is probably one of the greatest fictional fathers ever written in the course of time, because he makes sure that his kids understand the power of treating people equally, and just because somebody is not the same skin color as themselves, that doesn't mean that they should treat that person poorly. And yeah, so he defends a black person in court when he knows that he actually does know that the system is so flawed, and that black person will not actually get justice because he has been falsely accused of rape. But he still takes that case on because otherwise he would not be able to live with himself. So yeah, he does that, and people start to turn on him. Society revolts because they don't want Atticus Finch to take that black man's case. So that's what happens. And honestly, if Atticus Finch was real, I would take advice from him every single day, because he's just the kind of character, just the kind of man who would give really smart and wise advice. So yeah, and this is a really heartbreaking, eye-opening book, and it's just the kind that deserves to be on your TBR. So definitely, book on my list is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, and this is a really short and accessible book in terms of language, but emotionally you need to prepare yourself, because it is it's basically about two drifters, George and Lenny, who dream of having a piece of land that they get to call their own. So at its core it's about loneliness, powerlessness, and just the harsh realities of life, and the world they live in just makes them so vulnerable. And at the end of the day, the American dream they have is actually just a dream, because again the system is so flawed, and it just makes them so vulnerable to actually achieve what they want. And so I'm gonna tell it to you this way. So, for example, Lenny, he is almost like, okay, you can sorry, yeah, yeah. So Lenny, much like Frankenstein's monster, you can almost see how those two have some similarities, because the monster is also misunderstood. So this book is basically about misunderstanding and how society almost sometimes fails you. And yeah, it just it's a really short and accessible book. It's like I can't even speak. Anyways, it's a really short and accessible book, and it just really packs a punch. So yeah, you should check that out. So the next book I want to talk about is The Animal Farm by George Orwell. And while this is a short-ish book, it still deals with a lot of intense themes. So just don't go based on the page count, but it's still a really really important powerful book which is still so relevant. And okay, so basically if you want a crash course in political allegory and you don't want to feel like you're stuck in a lecture, and George Orwell just does that, and he does that so well. And he takes the complexities of really really intense themes like totalitarianism, socialism, dictatorship, and he just makes that turn into something so biting, so sharp, and so just wonderful. And all of that he does just through the portrayal of farm animals, and which it sounds a little bizarre when I'm just telling it to you, but when you read it, it actually does make more sense. And at first glance it just seems like, oh, the animals are staging a protest or revolution against the humans. But they are full of hope, and eventually when there is a change of power, you actually see that the situation hasn't changed. It's just like the rulers have changed, but the situation, but the lack of rights doesn't. About how power is a really really tricky thing, and it can so easily go so wrong. What I'm gonna talk about is, I've already talked about this book I think a few times on my channel, but it just like felt right for this like topic of the video. So the next book is The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. And okay, so picture this: once you're just like sleeping, you wake up and you find out that, oh, I've actually turned into a bug. And as bizarre as it sounds, it's actually a really like stark exploration of like isolation, loneliness, and guilt, and what it just like means to be truly alienated and just like have no one who believes in you or just like wants to like take care of you. So the protagonist Gregor Samsa, he turns into a bug, and his transformation isn't like just physical, because it's also almost like a reflection of how invisible he already was, because he was the provider of his family, and as soon as that ability of his is curtailed, his family does not give him that same amount of attention and efforts. As slow heartbreaking realization that he is no longer wanted in that family just like makes for such an interesting read. And he Kafka just like takes something so human and so surreal as and so bizarre as like just like turning into an insect into something so like weird and completely unsettling, but equally like relevant, and equally it's gonna resonate with. Okay, no, mosquitoes. So the next book I want to talk about is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and I just like love Frankenstein and I love Mary Shelley. And okay, so Frankenstein is a deeply philosophical novel about ambition, creation, and what happens when like basic like us mortals, us humans like decide, oh, like I'm actually gonna play God and actually create a whole new creature, because haha, isn't that just so easy? And okay, so if you didn't know this already, Frankenstein was written by 18-year-old Mary Shelley. And if you think that, oh, I've actually not achieved anything in life, because honestly, same, because what am I doing? I'm just like sitting here talking to a camera while Mary Shelley wrote a book at 18. Oh, to me, I just like think she's just like so smart and a little creepy and unsettling. Would love to talk more about the Mary Shelley lore. And if you guys would like to like watch a video just like dedicated to Mary Shelley, please do let me know, and I would love to make that. Yeah, so Victor Frankenstein, he is basically a really really ambitious scientist who is completely totally obsessed with the idea of creating life. And the moment his experiment actually ends up like succeeding, he decides that, oh, I'm actually gonna abandon this like creature, because it's like horrible, and he is horrified by what he's done, and he just like abandons the creature because yeah, he's also, because the creature is ugly, creature is abandoned and hated, he just gets bitter because of how he has been treated by his creator. And he learns cruelty from a world where just like the world refuses to accept him. In a way, it's like less about horror and like it's more about the consequences of unchecked ambition and scientific ethics and the need for connection. So Mary Shelley, she like draws really heavily from like religion, mythology, and her own personal tragedies. So this like story, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, it's a story about loss as much as it's the like a precautionary tale about what happens when ambition is left unchecked and when people try to achieve more than like is allowed by natural laws and by the divine laws. Book I would really really want to talk about is Gooseberries by Anton Chekov, and this is a book about a man who finally achieves his dream about owning real estate and just like growing his own gooseberries. But in like true Russian literature fashion, it just like turns into an existential spiral. And the narrator of the story, he sees his brother's happiness as like really smug and hollow, and he just like makes you question if anybody is truly content in their lives and or are just like convincing themselves that, oh, actually my life is pretty good. He believes that every happy person should have someone knocking on their door and reminding them of the world's suffering, and like it's just basically like a classic Russian literature guilt trip. And He doesn't give answers. It's just like a quiet and unsettling feeling, and yeah, it's just gonna leave you thinking about the narrator, thinking about the story for a really long time. This video could not have been like complete if I did not talk about William Shakespeare. So the one Shakespeare play I'm gonna recommend is Macbeth, and Shakespeare can be intimidating, but Macbeth is just like probably one of the easiest plays to follow, and it's mainly because it's packed with such like interesting and intriguing themes like murder, like ambition, and like war and witches, and like some of the most quotable lines in literature, because this is the play where you get the line fair is fair and foul is fair, and out damned spot. Like these are the plays with these are the lines that come from this really famous play by Shakespeare. And so basically, the plot is really simple, and it's about Macbeth, the protagonist. He is a loyal Scottish general, and he hears a prophecy from three witches that he will become king. And he just like encouraged, or you can say pressured by his wife, Lady Beth, he decides to speed things up by deciding, oh, I'm actually just gonna kill the king. So he decides he will achieve that by committing murder. But the thing is, like, committing a murder and actually achieving the crown is one thing, but like actually bearing the, what was that, what's that saying, heavy is the head that wears the crown, heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? Yeah, so basically the point is, yeah, getting the crown is a different thing, but actually maintaining the powers and actually being able to execute what having the crown means is a completely different thing, and it just like really just like spirals into chaos. Really famous and well-known critic Terry Eagleton, he argues that the witches that are in the story who tell Macbeth the prophecy, they aren't just like chaos, or they aren't just like agents of chaos, and they're not just there to ruin Macbeth's life, but they're actually one of the most subversive like figures in the play. And yeah, and unlike just like Macbeth, who gets tangled in power struggles, the witches exist outside the system, and they refuse to play refuse to like navigate society how it's expected of them to. Okay, so the last and final book I'm gonna recommend, which is the 15th book and 15th book in this list, it's The Little Prince, and this is me ending this video on a heartwarming note, because because The Little Prince is actually a children's book, but I feel like this is one of those children's books that every like adult should read. What's up with my throat? I've been speaking for too long. I have already been speaking for 40 minutes. Wrap up this video because it's gonna take me hours to edit it. Ugh. But see, this is what I do for you guys. So stick around and like subscribe, like, and comment. Anyways, the last book. Okay, so while this is a children's book, this is one of those books that every adult should read. It's like a really profound book, and so basically, it's about a pilot who just like crash lands in the desert, and he dessert. It's like it's just like I have sweet treats on my mind. He crash lands in the desert, and he just like meets a strange little boy from another planet, but really it's actually about so much more. It's about love, loss, growing up, and like seeing the world with a kind of wonder that adulthood just like strips away from our lives. And through the little prince's encounters with a vain king, a work obsessed businessman, a fox who teaches him about love, you start to realize that this book isn't just for kids, and it's for anyone who has ever felt lost or forgotten. Also gonna remind you how important it is to take care of your roses, to see what's beyond in front of you, and to just like take life slow, and to never let the curiosity and kindness that makes your life meaningful, just not to let that die. And there you have it. These are my 15 beginner friendly classics that I think are really gonna make you feel that classic literature does not have to be so intimidating and daunting. And yeah, as much as I would love to have recommended Jane Austen in this video, because I feel like I mean, there's definitely the Jane Austen short stories which I could have, but like I just wanted to go a little bit more than Jane Austen, Dostoevsky, because there's so much more to classic literature. And yeah, whether you already read some of these books in the list, or if you're going to, please do let me know in the comments, and please do let me know which ones are actually gonna end up on your TBR, which one are you gonna start immediately if you are, and just like which one is are you most excited to pick up, because yeah, I just want you guys to like these books. If you like this video, please do subscribe, like, comment, like the whole thing, and I'll see you in my next video. And thank you for watching. I hope you're having a good day and happy reading. And please do give these books a chance. So, thank you for watching and bye.